I don't have a crystal ball, so very hard for me to tell you what are the numbers this year. But what I see out there, and working really with hundreds of different companies in my role, is I see that some companies are sort of taking the cautious path and always looking for best practices. And other companies, and it's a small, smidgen of companies, are saying, we've got to be the best employer. We want to be better than we are right now. We want to know what our super strengths are, and are really using data to test and learn hypotheses that they have, and looking at the investment that they're making in people and what's the upside. Is there an upside? Do they need to pivot? So really like using lean startup principles and wanting to be an early adopter. So what I expect from the numbers this year, because I've seen some employers, those smidgen of employees, early adopters, like really doubling down and being innovative, is I expect that the average and the 75 percentile and up the gap is going to widen. That's what I expect. So like last year's numbers we saw for turnover, the average employer was 29%. The outperformers, or those 75 percentile and up, were 11%. Like, what's the difference in that? It's the ones that were average had 3 times as many employees that were churning under a year. I mean, that's a huge cost. Actually, the exact cost is on average $6 million, versus the 11% turnover was under $1 million. So definitely there's a cost. The eNPS score last year, 40% for average, 70 for outperformers. One of the ones I'm most excited about, and I know I talked about this with you last year, is just seeing like our highest growth companies, our top 10 of our 100 sample, were also those ones who outperformed in terms of gender and BIPOC diversity at the leadership level, because that's really, really important. So we saw those top 10, the 49% were, people who identified as a woman, and 33% at the leadership level, people who identified as being BIPOC. So I'm excited about that.
I mean, it's just kind of like, it really, if you were ever questioning it previously, kind of really, really drives that home of like, diversity and inclusion is really important if you want to be a successful company. I mean, probably no one on this call is questioning that, but there's still those executives, there's still those CEOs and those founders who, they need to see the raw data before they're going to make the move. They don't want to do it just for, the other right reasons to do it. They need to be convinced that it's financially the right move to make. And so this data is just reinforcing that so well. So
I know, I was really excited. It was exciting to actually see that, because I know it in my heart, and I know that having diverse talent is actually the best choice, and the next best choice is non-diverse talent. Like, I've never thought that the people you hire are the best talent. They're just the talent that are the easiest shortcut route for you that you can find. And that's obviously not the best talent, because the best talent is like, it's kind of a numbers game, but it's also what diversity we've all seen when a team is diverse in so many ways, what that brings to a team in terms of ideas and perspective, and then output to product and whatever it is. So I'm so passionate about that.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, we've all heard this, we've all heard it, we all know it. And I love that this report is just reinforcing it. It's going to be another tool in the arsenal of like HR people professionals to just go to their leadership team and be like, look, if you needed another data point of why we need to really double down on this, here it is. Now you mentioned those 5 trends in 2022 to prepare for. So I'd love for you to, let's talk a little bit more about those 5 trends that you think you're going to be seeing in 2022.
Yeah, so this is a bit of a mouthful. There's 5 trends. So the first one is workers aren't staying put. Like employees, CEOs, everybody's moving, right? So the mobile employer or worker is the first one. And then if you look at World Economic Forum, their survey says up to 40% of employees less than 40 years old, which is basically tech, everyone in tech except me. So up to 40%, they're planning to relocate in the next 6 months. And we see this. We see everybody is moving away from big cities, you know, and I wish I could too, but I'm tied down with my family. So what does that mean? What's your move as an employer? It means you need to know what you're going to support and what you won't support. Have a remote work sort of remote work policy. Go through worst case scenarios. If your best executive, if your best engineer leaves and goes to ABC location, what are you going to support? Don't wait. It's going to happen. It's going to happen tomorrow. Second trend, no back to work. Like, I don't know how much time we're spending on saying, what are you guys doing on the going back to work? We are at work. We have to be not just productive, but we have to have a great employee, a consumer grade employee experience when it comes to being remote first. So stop spending time on back to work, but start spending time on, what's the permanent home space or space for an employee, and how can you set them up to be ergonomically, from a design point of view, from a productivity, from a safety, from a privacy point of view, just make that a great space for them, just like you did the other space you had that you call the office. So just a little bit passionate about that whole back to work thing. I'm not negating that there's lots of logistics in bringing people back to a space, right? But it should be the same. You bring them back to a space, they're going to co-working space, they're going to client space. These are spaces, and we need safety around spaces. End of story. Third, cash is still king. So compensation, I expect to continue to rise. It's always sort of based on inflation, based on the economy. There's lots of things, but what I see is there's a lot more active jobs. Business is continuing to grow. And so demand is high, and on the supply side, companies are still reporting a drop in like 30% in terms of inbound applicants, sometimes more. So demand and supply, and this is not just a Canadian or a US phenomenon, this is a global phenomena. And especially in the US, UK, and India, they are having the highest growth in terms of job growth, right? So that puts employees in the driver's seat, clearly. And one of the interesting factors is remote employees, like the remote employers, I should say, are rising. And US especially, about I think it was 45% of the remote roles are actually in the US. So that affects us too, because we know big companies are hiring in relative time zones and beyond. We all know that. We all are trying to compete with not just other scaling startups, but kind of everybody in our relative time zone, really. It's so hard to say who you compete with these days. I was looking at a job board called We Work Remotely, really growing like hockey stick growth in terms of the number of open roles. They have 11,000 roles posted. They have 2.5 million visitors monthly. It's just increasing and increasing. The remote salary average globally is higher than the global average of those who are not remote. So a remote average is 143K and growing at 4.6%. So it's sort of you could call it our highest growth talent segment. So what can employers do around remote is have a remote work strategy. This is an interesting one. Start with your own bottom range across globally. So like, say for engineers, don't just look at it locally, but actually have a bottom range globally. What that does is it incentivizes people to actually stay in their location. Because I am seeing more and more that people, companies have multiple locations, that engineers will actually move from one location to another to get a bump in pay. Like, you do not want to incentivize people to move around. You want to pay fairly and have more of a global strategy. taking into account local cost of living. So that, I thought that was interesting. Another thing I think is an interesting opportunity is acqui-hiring, right? Like there's so many acquisitions going on, by a team, right? I'm not in the M&A field, but I think there's a huge opportunity. I mean, Google does that all the time, right? Not last one. Told you it was a mouthful. Flexibility. Okay, we've heard this word so much, right? Like back bend. How flexible can I be, right? Like, I don't know. I feel like I should be doing a back bend, but flexibility is overtaking careers the number one priority for employees, especially the ones that are getting hired. And it's especially important when you're more than 30 years old. It shows that career up to that point is sort of your number one, and then it becomes flexibility and family. And I'm looking at a survey that's from Comparably when I'm saying that. So companies like Tulip are using this to stand out. There's lots of good examples, but on their website it says, there will be almost no restrictions on work flexibility. Okay, so employers are pulling out all the stops around flexibility. So what can you do is just, I think, know what matters to employees, like do focus groups, really dig in before you make big changes that might not matter, that might not, give you the upside you're looking for. And last one is resilience. So in 2022, I think that organizations will increase their awareness on what employee well-being means, and create more space for employees to take care of themselves. Like I just don't know what world we're living where employers are, they're really looking out for our long-term wellness. I mean, especially, I'm seeing more CEOs, Benchsci and a few others, really being introspective about how their culture does or doesn't create, long-term wellness for employees, and just, building in the right practices. So I'm excited about that trend. And I think there's some interesting products that are being developed, concierge services, health checks for regular employees, not just executives, life coaching. I just saw a startup called Oath Care, that's doing peer-to-peer parenting groups and coaching. I mean, I love that. I could have used that for sure. And in 2021, we already saw a lot of companies doing these reset days, weeks, right? Summer, winter, it's great. And then 2022, I think we're going to see more of this forced downtime. Like imagine forced downtime after a big project, or forced downtime after maybe 2 or 3 years in a company, and you get to take a sabbatical. Looking forward to that, I have to say.
This is awesome. And I mean, we see it with our clients as well. We see it with our own team of like, these things are really important. And like these all kind of really tie into each other, especially like the mobile worker, allowing flexible options for people to work in different locations and providing them the tools and resources they need. And please stop calling it back to work. We've all been working for the past 3 years. It's back to
and
office.
Working very hard.
Yeah, we've all been working harder. And cash is king. Like if you go into any HR forum, everyone's talking about how compensations has been exploding over the past couple of years. Yeah. It's insane. And resilience, I love it. I think it's forcing companies to do what they should have done years ago, which is actually start paying attention to their employees' well-being. And you had some companies that were doing this, and they're better prepared for the pandemic than a lot of them, and they got to ride it out a bit better. They didn't see those massive churn rates, and they didn't see people dropping off. They got to keep their core teams and do really well and ride it out. But people are starting to realize that they have to catch up. And you're seeing, like you said, these new products, people are putting in real mental wellness resources, not like the traditional EAPs of yesteryear, where you would maybe get 1 or 2 consulting sessions and then you'd have to pay out of pocket out of that after that.
I know. I don't think I've ever used one.
Yeah. No, and to try and get one, you had to jump through 20 hoops to do it.
Oh.
So it's awesome to see these I think we all know it. We all know these kind of things, but seeing it laid out in the data just reinforces it and allows us to focus on these things and really start driving our roadmaps in a more concentrated way. And like you said, we're using the data to back up what we're doing. And so when we kind of like go to our leadership teams, when we're doing those board meetings, we're reporting to the board, we can say, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And we're doing it based off of this data that's being collected. We're not just taking a shot in the dark, which, I think a lot of times we do as people teams. I know I've done it in the past when you just don't have access to the data. You're like, well, I'm going to do a salary survey or a survey to my team and kind of put my finger in the wind and do a couple of things that I hope work. And if they don't, in 6 months, I'll change it up and try something new.
Yeah. And you've got all those employees to ask questions to, right? Like create a version 1 of things. Don't build something and pray and, it just doesn't make any sense, right? So, yeah. And get access to a data analyst. There's some great courses. I should get a kickback from them. AI HR, some great courses for HR people on data analytics, right? That I've taken to upskill myself. But yeah, there's a lot you can do to use data.
Yeah, I think the rise of people analytics is going to be really big this year and continuing. I mean, it has been rising, but I think it's just going to get more and more and more. I know as we build out our own tech stack here, like the HR tech stack was never a real thing. It was like you had an HRIS and an ATS, and then maybe like a L&D platform. But now we have a tech stack just like the marketing team. We have a tech stack just like our sales team.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've got to have, work really closely with IT to define that, work really closely with marketing to do your branding, work really closely with the data team to do your data analytics. Yeah. There's just so much you can do. Such an exciting time to be the head of people, honestly. And we're finally getting some street cred, right? Like I'm getting companies as 30 people saying, I want a VP of people now, right? The same companies who, someone who was their EA and was a great people person was in charge of people and culture. You just can't do that now. It's there's too much risk. So It's a great time.
Well, it reminds me of I saw a report come out at the end of the year last year from Indeed, and they tracked the number of open roles that were posted on their platform, and the amount of open roles for HR people outstripped every other role. So that included engineers, software engineers. So there was more companies looking for HR and people than there were engineers, which blew my mind.
That's crazy. I can't believe it. I know we started late, but we came to the end of our time. Can I do a shameless plug for the people benchmarking report?
Of course, do it.
So 2022 people benchmarking report for SaaS companies. It's the most relevant data you're going to get if you're a SaaS company in terms of people metrics, from productivity to retention to diversity, turnover, and really breaking it down. Similar stage, private, scaling companies. You get a free copy. It takes you 10 minutes. You'll see some best practices from companies like Loopio, 7 Shifts, Maple, and some other very high growth companies in terms of revenue growth and people practices. And you get to, one person will get to put $500 towards their favorite charity. So go online. I did put the survey link there. Go online and fill it out, and you'll get some of the best, most relevant data.
I will say that we participated last year, and it was an amazing report to have in our arsenal of data to inform our people practices. So I do highly recommend it. It's a good one to do. Check it out. And like I said, like Daneal said, 10 minutes of your time. You can do it while you're drinking a cup of coffee and having a little bit of downtime from whatever fire you're putting out today or tomorrow.
I love it. I love the selling.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Daneal, for your insights and talking about what we're gonna be seeing this year, or what you think we're gonna be seeing, and and I'm sure, and we'll all get to see what the report says, so we can kind of like see if Daneal was right or not.
Yeah, I know. I noticed you recorded me. Oh God. Now you've got on tape whether I was right or wrong. All right.
Well, we can put some bets down now and see
Okay.
what we're doing.
All right. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your flexibility moving over to Zoom. We'll do better next time with the LinkedIn Live, I promise. Just really didn't want to start for us. So, but thanks for joining us here. And we'll be sharing over that recording and any other resources. We'll send out the salary or the report link again, and we'll send out a link for the AIHR courses as well, because they are great. I've checked them out and recommended them to people on my team as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
All
Daneal.
right. Bye, folks.
Ciao.